Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of the Primetime Newscast in the English language and Canal International. I'm called Morinzi. We begin with our top stories. Journalists in Cameroon still face precarious existence from poor working conditions, meager salaries, non-respect of collective convention, and many others. On the occasion of World Press Freedom Day, journalists say it is time to evaluate and reflect on the way forward. Meantime, the Minister of Communication, Rene Emmanuel Sadi, says government is multiplying mechanisms to better the economic situation of the press in Cameroon, which is currently undergoing a lot of difficulties. This year's World Press Freedom Day, or as Cameroon joined the rest of the world to celebrate World Press Freedom Day, press freedom has also been asserted by members of the Cameroonian public who believe the media content is more often than not influenced by the high and the mighty. And dealers in fairly used cloth in the Bamenda main market are in pain after a couple of their warehouses were razed down by fire. These were major stories. Details right ahead.
Canal International.
Good evening once more. Journalists in Cameroon still face precarious existence from poor working condition, a meager salary, non-respect of the collective convention, and many more. On the occasion of World Press Freedom Day, journalists say it is time to evaluate and reflect on the way forward. It is another May 3, a moment of reflection for pressmen and women across the globe.
Very proud being a journalist, even though that we have certain challenges, having access to information, the ability to be able to, to do our job by informing the population. But a day like this makes me proud to be a member of the fourth estate, an estate that holds to account the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative.
Only looking at maybe governments clamping down on, the press, it's equally to look at how the press is handling information. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is credible information, and just like President Thomas Jefferson would tell you, that if everybody feels comfortable and safe when there is a free press, if there is a free press, the government is comfortable, the government is safe, the citizens are equally safe.
In Cameroon, journalists, though passionate and conscious of their environment, they still feel insecure, taking to constant threat, harassment and detention of journalists struggling to do just their job.
It's time for journalists to begin thinking about plan B's and C's, to begin thinking about other options, because with the impact of the social media platforms, with the impact of what you call citizen journalism, the future for conventional journalism is bleak.
To many, this year's theme, Journalism Under Surveillance, only highlights multiple ways in which surveillance and digitally mediated attacks endanger journalists and journalism.
Journalists and their sources are under constant surveillance. If you look at the fact that digitalization has made it easier to have information, it has also made it easier for people in power and companies to be able to access the database of journalists. This is very threatening, because the fundamental principle of access to press that was granted by the United Nations is the ability to protect your source. A source should not be in danger for giving an information to the press, but increasingly this is becoming difficult because there's a possibility to hack the entire system of a journalist's computer and get access to information that is supposed to be private, that is supposed to protect your source.
While hoping for better days ahead, journalists think that coming together and build a stronger association and trade union will warrant respect from governments and media owners. And access to information is an excruciating equation to solve in the media landscape. And as the world celebrates World Press Freedom Day today, critics think it is time for an Access to Information Act to be enacted in Cameroon. More on the story with our reporter, Kejan Henry Atembe.
The role of the media, amongst others, is to enhance accountability and transparency of institutions in order to promote an open and democratic society to enable public debate on the conduct of these institutions.
As press freedom is concerned, I can read Cameroon a pass mark, and this is in relation, or if we want to compare with the situation of the press in other countries like Equatorial Guinea, the Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, and Chad. Definitely, we will want our country to compete with the best in the world.
Cameroon's parliament is still to pass a bill on access to information, despite decades of crusade by media professionals.
Press freedom is when people can have access to information, report without being afraid of to be punished, and that is where the country has to work hard. The other aspect is the area of access to information. It is high time Parliament passes a law for the access to information to be open and free.
According to some crusaders of the Act, government information should be made available to the public.
Now, the avalanche of press or the multiplication of media houses is not synonymous to press freedom. It is just akin to the proliferation of political parties, which can't be judged as a benchmark of press freedom.
But the woes of the Cameroonian press does not end there. The excruciating question of decriminalization is still on the table.
The other problem, which sometimes is being ignored, and I think on the World Press Freedom Day, is the way journalists are being treated. We know these problems that they have with the state, but the other enemy of press freedom in this country and elsewhere in Africa are the owners and promoters of private newspapers and broadcast media houses.
Summing all of these, observers of the media landscape opine that the avalanche of media outlets is not tantamount to press freedom, as the terror law still hovers on the neck of journalists at the slightest goof.
And as Cameroon joins the rest of the world today to celebrate World Press Freedom Day, press freedom has also been asserted by members of the Cameroonian public who believe the media content is more often than not influenced by the high and the mighty. More on the story with our reporter, Regina Leketandak.
Journalism under siege. Media professionals mark World Press Freedom Day this May 3rd at a time when journalists continue to work on the surveillance. Even the man on the street has an idea. For me, the press in Cameroon is not free. From my understanding, most information relayed is linked more with politics, and it is treated before published. Some Cameroonians believe press freedom in Cameroon is hindered by influential personalities. The media in Cameroon is not totally free. It's rare to find an organ that is 100% free. A majority of the media organs are influenced by politicians. Not everyone thinks the media in Cameroon is not free. I believe the Cameroonian press is free, even if there are adjustments to make. I think there is press freedom in Cameroon. I have witnessed the evolution of the press in Cameroon from different newspapers right up to the audiovisual media age. Because before there was just one TV station, but today there are many stations, so we can say there has been evolution. With the coming of the social media, there has been the rise in citizen journalism, making it difficult to distinguish from real and fake news, while media organs have been urged to do fact-checking before publishing their information.
And this year's World Press Freedom Day is celebrated under the theme Journalism Under Digital Siege spotlights the multiple ways in which journalism is endangered by surveillance and digitally mediated attacks on journalists and the consequences of all this on public trust in digital communication. Here is UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on how surveillance and hacking are compromising. Take a listen.
On World Press Freedom Day, we shine a spotlight on the essential work of journalists and other media workers who seek transparency and accountability from those in power, often at great personal risk. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, many media workers have been on the front lines, providing accurate, science-based reporting to inform decision makers and save lives. At the same time, journalists who cover climate, biodiversity and pollution have succeeded in bringing global attention to this triple planetary crisis. But the threats to the freedom of journalists and media workers are growing by the day. From global health to the climate crisis, corruption and human rights abuses, they face increased politicization of their work and attempts to silence them from many sides. Digital technology has democratized access to information, but it has also created serious challenges. The business model of many social media platforms are based not on increasing access to accurate reporting, but on increasing engagement, which often means provoking outrage and spreading lies. Media workers in war zones are threatened not only by bombs and bullets, but by the weapons of falsification and disinformation that accompany modern warfare. They may be attacked as the enemy, accused of espionage, detained or killed, simply for doing their jobs. Digital technology also makes censorship even easier. Many journalists and editors around the world are at constant risk of their programs and reports being taken offline. And digital technology creates new channels for oppression and abuse. Women journalists are at particular risk of online harassment and violence. UNESCO found that nearly 3 in 4 women respondents had experienced online violence. Hacking and illegal surveillance also prevent journalists from doing their jobs. The methods and tools change, but the goal of discrediting the media and covering up the truth remains the same as ever. And the results are also the same. People and societies that are unable to distinguish fact from fiction and can be manipulating in horrifying ways. Without freedom of the press, there are no real democratic societies. Without freedom of the press, there is no freedom. The United Nations is working to support journalists and media workers everywhere. 10 years ago, we established a plan of action on the safety of journalists to protect media workers and end the impunity for crimes committed against them. On World Press Freedom Day, we honor the essential work of the media in speaking truth to power, exposing lies, and building strong, resilient institutions and societies. We call on governments, media organizations, and technology companies everywhere to support these crucial efforts. Thank you.
And away from World Press Freedom Day, we take you to Bamenda in the northwest region, where dealers in fairly used cloth are in pain after their shops were razed down by wildfire. More in the following story.
This is the aftermath of the fire incident that burnt to ashes about 200 bales of second-hand dresses behind the Bamenda main market on the night of Sunday, breaking Monday. People who live barely a step away from the warehouse started fighting the flames. Immediately it broke out at about 10 p.m. before the army rescue crew joined them.
In due course of packing their things in a warehouse, they should be sure that there's no light there. Because if you see what has just happened, all the rooms inside, about 5 or 6 rooms, there were no lights. But there's one small room that there was light inside. And you know, in due course, we cannot determine whether the origin of that fire is electricity or not.
While waiting for an effective assessment of the total loss incurred, this man, who had the biggest packing store, says he lost 115 bales.
My whole life has burned down like this. I'm short of words. I have 115 bales. 100 kilo is 100 kg. Yeah, that's the cheapest bale inside. It's 130.
The origin of the fire is still to be determined, as the building is not connected to electricity, which has often been blamed for most of the fire incidents in Bamenda. However, one of the rooms is used as a kitchen. Sunday night fire disaster has refreshed sad memories of a similar one in 2019, still suffered by some of today's victims.
And that report brings us to the end of this edition of the Primetime Newscast in the English language on Canal International. Thanks so much for watching. We have news in the French language at exactly this number 50. We are coming up next is the brief with Leo Pijou. As well, we'll be back same time tomorrow. Good night.